as you begin to think and act like God thinks, then you start getting the guidance. The right people start to show up. And whereas at one time it would happen and you'd go, well, booga, 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 what's going on? I was having this thought, and then all of a sudden it just showed up. What happens is you start to say, of course, the right people do show up. The right events do take place. The financing does happen. I assure you that there are people here on this trip who had to figure out a way to come up with the financing to do it, and were concerned about it perhaps right up until a week or so before the trip. Are there people like that in here in the room who, yeah, and somehow you're here, you know, and it's like, it works. You know you're supposed to be here and you just sort of turn it over, and it's like, and that kind of thing begins to happen. And then for me, I begin to realize that everything that shows up in my life, the separation from my wife, the pain, the depression, the stress, my kids will tell you how hard that is, you know, to break up a family, you know, where we all love each other so much. It's almost unbearable. You wonder how you'll get through the hour. And yet Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a dear friend of mine before she passed away, she said, if you shield the mountain from the windstorms, you'll never see the beauty of the carvings. The storms of our life allow us to produce the beauty. The book, The Power of Intention, I wrote in the midst of that horrifying experience. Some of the most beautiful people have come into my life as a result of that. And I've come to a place where I realize that what Francesco was speaking about, the suffering is something to be blessed, not to be afraid of. My father walked out on his family when I was just a baby, and my two brothers were 2 and 4. And he just abandoned his family, never looked back, never made a phone call, never paid any support, just didn't have anything to do with us. He just walked away. And I grew up with an enormous amount of hatred and anger and bitterness towards this man, wondering how could he treat my mother this way and leave his 3 children and just never even make contact. And as I grew up, I spent the first 9 years or so of my life in a series of foster homes and orphanages, and then my mother managed to get her family all back together again. My oldest brother lived with my grandmother. My other brother, David, and I went to all these different homes together. And I was filled with rage. And I look back and I know that there was some very powerful reason for me to go through those. I often say that we all have the parents that we have because they are what we need. And it's almost as if God said to me before I showed up here, what do you want to do in this lifetime? And I said, I'd like to teach self-reliance. God said, you want to spend a whole lifetime teaching self-reliance? And I said, yes. And God said, then we better get your little ass into an orphanage. You know? And you will learn to rely upon yourself there. That's as good a place as any. And then no one will ever be able to dissuade you that you have within you the ability to overcome virtually anything. And that's been a lesson that I've known, and my children will tell you. It's like, my daughter gave me a plant. My daughter Sage, sitting here in the front, gave me a plant about 3 years ago. It's a plant that grows out of a rock. I just love it. I named it Impossible. And I just have to water it, and it just keeps growing. And it's just, there's no soil there. It's just growing out of a rock. And I look at that thing and think, if that plant can grow out of a rock, I can do anything. I've just always known that You just make things happen. You don't come up with excuses. I've written books about it. You know, excuses be gone. Look within and make it happen. And ask for divine guidance. And if you've got addictions, or you've been overweight, or you've been poor, or you're troubled in relationships, or whatever it might be, look within. Identify yourself as a piece of God. And know that with God, all things are possible. Now you tell me what that leaves out. What does all things are possible leave out? Nothing. All things mean all things. If you can visualize it and put your attention on it, you can make it happen. And we are in a temple that sits on the grounds that celebrates the life of a man who absolutely knew that and was declared a saint less than 2 years after his death, when it used to take centuries for such things to happen.